Alright, welcome home racing fans. Well, like I showed in the TGIF video, still playing with this car. Still box stock. Just got it in from Slot Car Corner. Always great service from those guys. Top shelf. And this car, just like the red one before it, is certainly a star. Very smooth. Very well done on the outside. Very well done on the inside. Just all around very nice slot car. And again, this is box stock. I haven't done anything. I've loosened up the pod screws a little bit. Just cleaned the tires over here with just a little bit of alcohol Windex mix just to keep the stock rubber clean, and adjusted the braid. So pretty impressive just the way it is. Some might say that's the way it should be. Anyway, we've got some other tires to change. We'll look at some lap times, do a few adjustments, just to see if we can get it a little bit better. But just the way it is, zero complaints. And mechanically speaking, it's the same as the first release, of course. Stock motor, bench tested this one at 22,285. It's within 100 of the other motors, so can't really complain about that. And standard gearing, 11 to 32, so they're going to match right up. Okay, we'll talk about the front ride height. We've done this before, but it bears going over again. When you're adjusting the front axle, if you're raising it up to lower the guide into the slot or to set up for that perfect tripod, just be careful, because you'll likely get some tire to body contact right about here. Now, if you have a tire machine and you want to use the stock tires, you can reduce the diameter like I have here, and you can round off the sidewall just a little bit. Just test fit as you go. But I've got this pretty well. As you can see, I've removed all the tread design, about 1 millimeter at least in the diameter, and then I have the axle set right there at the sweet spot where I want it to be. But of course, every track is different. Your preference is going to be different. So there's, different ways to attack this. If you don't have a tire machine, then of course, guide shims. That's a really easy way to set the height without having to worry about all this. Just start installing the shims and testing it out on your track to get the height that you want. Then you can just set the axle and you're good to go. You can also use different tires, different diameter tires that are already made for you. Paul Gage makes the 18095 LM, and it's a great tire for this. It's already reduced the diameter, plus they're really easy to sand and contour. So you can sand and contour this even more, and then you can coat it if you want to make a zero grip. And speaking of the zero grips, Quick Slicks, they make a 32Z, which is an excellent approach to this. As you can see, I put it on the first release, and yeah, you got it. We got clearance. So any of those ways will work. Just wanted to go over this with you while you're adjusting the car, to just be careful with this, because you certainly don't want it rubbing. So before you start coating and making your own zero grips, just a little thing we've been doing for quite a few years, just to minimize the contact of the front tires to the track, and that's to put a small taper on them like that. And so while the tires are at speed, just take an emery board, hold it at an angle, just give it that slight little taper effect, and then the outside edge here, just a little bit of this outside edge is all that's really touching the track. Okay, to make your own zero grips, I don't like using nail polish. It just makes the tires very hard and loud when they're running out on the wood track. So they don't make future Pledge Floor Shine anymore, but this Quick Shine product, the Floor Luster, it does a equally good job at doing the zero grip. So I'll just put some on a Q-tip, have the power splice set at low voltage, and I'll just draw it across here, and I'll give it about 3 or 4 coats, and it does a great job. I've got the voltage set for 1.8, 1.9, so right under 2 volts. Nice and slow, so there's not a lot of splatter, if any at all. I always put a paper towel down just in case. You don't have to, but just in case you get a little bit. But I'll let it go at 2 volts for about 15 minutes. Then I'll go ahead and give it another coat. And speaking of tires, it's time to talk about the rear. Now, there are options for this car, don't get me wrong, but you can't go too crazy because, well, it's all about clearance. You don't have a whole lot here, especially here on the spur gear side. The spur gear is already fully mounted up against the pod, and as you can see, you just can't go any further than that. But on the outside is one of the main issues, where you have the body coming down right here, and the sidewall could rub, so you really can't get much wider. Now here you can see where the face of the pinion is almost rubbing the inside sidewall. Now with this, you could trim the motor shaft and give the pinion a slight bevel, taper effect there to try to clear on this side, but you just can't go too much further on the outside. But we have a few tires to talk about, so we'll get to that right away. So even with the restrictions, we still have tires, of course. First of all, in silicone, we have Quick Slicks CB34. You can see this is 34F. That's just a firm compound. You can go extra firm if you want, but 34 is the size. Then for urethane, good old Paul Gage always has a tire 2010 5LM. That's a perfect fit. Just no clearance issues whatsoever. Now, as far as stock rubber goes, sometimes it just seems to me that everybody just goes straight to NSR. And, for good reason, they make an outstanding tire. But I'll tell you what, Slot.it makes a pretty good tire too. And that's what I'm going to go with. I picked up these 1171 G25 compound, and I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with these tires. So do yourself a favor and always test the tires for your own track before you just, take someone else's advice. Always test. So there's NSR, there's Scale Auto, and there's Slot.it, and that's what I'm going to use. So we're going to get these glued on and trued, and I think you're going to be very surprised with the performance. So everyone has their favorite way of gluing the tires to the wheels. I'm not going to pretend that one way is better than the other. I just like my method. It just seems to work for me, and that's just Hansen's Hard as Nails, like a clear nail polish, but it's pretty tough. And once you give it time, about 30 minutes to dry, it holds the tire on here pretty good, and it lasts. Yet, you can peel it off if you have to, a lot easier than super glue. So all I do is just get a little bit here on the brush, just going around the outside there, then go around on the inside. As you'll notice, I'm not putting a lot here. I'm not going crazy. We're not blobbing it around. Just a light coat is all you really need. Then tire on the wheel, pretty easy, slips on there. There you go. And then finally, I just roll it like this, make sure it's fully seated. And with using this, unlike some super glues, I have time. Now I can go over here, I can do the other one. I'm not in a big hurry to make sure that I rolled it in time to get it seated. It's good to go. If that's not good enough for you, you could put some super glue here on the inside, but I don't. That's just enough for me. Now, as far as these bushings and axle go, this is what you're going to need for, your tire machine to be able to mount these. So I have a spare slotted axle and some SCC, Slot Car Corner Racing bushings, and I just make that up. So now we can attach our pulley and get them in the truer. Well, everyone has their favorite method. You ask, hey, how do you do this? You're going to get 100 different answers. Everybody has their own technique. But really, low and slow is the best advice I can give you. Low voltage, slow rotation to reduce the heat. You don't want a lot of heat there on these tires. They'll just start to melt and chunk up really bad. Even this one has the small little chunks, as you can see, but it's not that bad. It'll polish out. And I'm just using water, a little bit of water, and I just put it directly on the sandpaper, or you can put it right on the on the tire if you want. Low and slow, I've got it set at 1.9 volts, And yes, it's going to take me a while, probably about 10-15 minutes per wheel, but well, it's just worth it. That's part of the tuning process. So we'll go a little bit longer here, and then we'll check our progress. So you take a break and you check your progress, and while it's still moist there from the water, you can tell the wear pattern. It's pretty obvious. We're getting closer, but like I said, it's just low and slow. Just take some time. Yeah, this looks pretty good. Nice, smooth sanding pattern. Just, not a lot of shredding, as we call it. Looks pretty good to me. Now we'll just move on to the next one. So we'll just go over a few things, kind of recap what I've done here with the chassis. We talked about the front tires. As far as the setup goes for the front ride height, I kind of like my tires touching, almost at perfect tripod. I kind of put some pressure here and make sure this side doesn't lift, the opposite rear. So that's what you want to do, make sure your chassis is straight. But that's what I do. You can set up your front axle and ride height any way you want. I added 4.4 grams of lead just right here in the center. I just thought, that's a good starting point. Back here, I did cut the motor shaft, then under power, I sanded down the pinion there, as you can see. Gave it just a little bit of tapered effect there, and I added just one motor screw right here to keep the motor from rocking. You can certainly add 2 of them. I just felt one does the job. We have our tires all trued up. Now, with that said, with the weight added, we will take a look here, and let's see, 52.6. Yep, not bad at all. So I think we're ready for road test. We got our tires all cleaned up. This compound, I think it's a good compound. It can wear odd depending on the driving style and the track you use, but I'm going to give it a shot. I think they're pretty good. So there we go. We're going to button it up, see how it goes. And just a final weigh in. Take a look here. 69 grams. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. It's not too chunky. Besides, I think they run a little bit better with the lead, with the weight just in the right spot. But we're just getting started. We'll have to test and tune. And also with the motor pod, I remove these screws. Just doesn't need it. And sometimes these screws kind of limit the pod movement. But so I just keep the 4 there. Some people put them here and take these. It's just personal preference, but I just remove the ones on the outside. We've got some really, really good float here. So now let's get it out on the track, because I just can't wait any longer. I know she's going to scoot. Oh yeah. No complaints. Tires doing well. A little bit more truing. Just getting started with the tuning process, but I'm not unhappy. This is just a really good slot car. A lot of people already know that. It's taken me a little bit to get this up, but you get sidetracked. But this is a great car, well worth price of admission. As we've talked about before, the investment in cars like this, the spare parts you get, the performance is just well worth the price of admission. Besides that, it's just a knockout. It's just all eye candy, man, and I dig it. Anyway, great running car. If you haven't taken the chance yet on this car, I mean, you might as well. It's almost one of those must-haves in our hobby. We waited so long for these cars, and then they finally delivered. So definitely worth it. Hope you guys are having a great one out there. Please stay safe, and look forward to your comments, feedback as always, and in the forum too, not just Facebook. Really do appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.